To take you through the screens on your machine, I'm first of all going to say that I'm on version 2.3.4. If you're on an older version, things will be on different screens in different places. So if we go back to page 1, we can change the language that our machine is in if you really want to. Units you can have in either millimeters or inches. I find it easier in terms of working with the mat to work in inches so that we can count the squares to size our design. We then have our cut area, which we can fit to a piece of card that we're working with, or we can just use the 12x12 mat or the 12x24. Now you notice, although we select 12x24, that's not our actual cutting area. That's because it will leave a border around any cut that we do. So again, 12x24 is that size, and the 12x12 is this size. So you see, even though it allows a border, it doesn't allow an even border, so we can't cut the same width to the height. Something that it is worth considering when you move on. And this button here that says background is for when we do a background scan. So let's say you've positioned either some patterned paper or several offcuts of card onto your mat. You can do a background scan. And if you're working with darker card, you're going to want to put it on that setting. If you're on lighter card, you're going to want to put it on that setting. I haven't switched it off yet, there's no point doing that. Okay, next screen. This is your cut speed and pressure and your draw speed and pressure. In the first video we took you through these two. And again, I'll say the same thing here about the draw speed and pressure. Wait until you've got a pen in before you start changing those. The next screen, auto shutdown. So this is basically where it's going to turn itself off if it's left to its own devices for any length of time. So currently I've got mine set to 4 hours because I demonstrate with my machine a lot, so I don't want it to go off of its own accord. But I recommend that you can turn that right down to about 15 minutes. The buzzer sound. Again, it's one of those things of, do you want it to be chirping at you all the time or not? To be honest, I prefer it there just to hear that it's actually recognised the click, but it's entirely up to you. The seam allowance button, which is set to 1/2 inch, I don't really use, so you can ignore that for now. Unless you're going to go straight into cutting fabric, in which case that changes, but for most people you're only going to need to use that later on down the line. Pattern interval, so in other words, how much you want it to repeat a pattern. To be perfectly honest, again, you don't need to worry about it at this stage, so just leave that set as 1. Page 4, we have our opening screen that we've already turned off. And this is where we get through to alignment for our cutter. So again, if we want to change our adjustment, if we're finding that squares aren't cutting square or our lines aren't meeting when it finishes the cut, that's where you go to for that one. Blade adjustment area, so that's where it does its little mark at the top. And the fill additional line. We'll have a lot more fun with that later on when we get to doing our drawing. So basically the machine can fill an area as well as outline it, and it can do so in a few different patterns. So you've got a solid fill, a stripe, a grid, a sort of isometric grid, and then quite a busy pattern. We'll go okay to that. The fill line spacing is more important when you're using the solid fill, and it depends on the width of your actual nib. And the fill direction is quite literally what it says. If you want it to fill like that, you can. If you want it to fill diagonally, you can. And if you want it to go horizontally, you can. Additional line is if you want to put in literally an additional line. If you've got a particularly fine pen that you want to bolder or something like that. So for now I'm just going to go back out of that. Page 5 is all about your machine information, so we have serial number, version number, and then your machine information. So if we go into version, it'll go and it'll look for update. Now that will only happen if your machine is a Wi-Fi enabled model. So in the UK that is 700 and 900, and I know that's slightly different in the US. And we're just going to go OK. And machine information is basically what it can cope with and what it can't. So it can't read the embroidery data, so the PES files. It has the Wi-Fi enabled and available, and then the maximum pattern number is how many patterns it can hold at any one time on your drawing, and of course the maximum scanning area. Note that machines that are sort of like the 300 cannot scan a 24-inch mat. It becomes more important later on. And we can go OK to that. This page is your network settings, which we'll go into in another video. Again, we're going to go into Canvas logins in another video. And your premium functions, if we go into that one, we have our emboss and our foil settings, and we've got them both enabled. And go OK. And that completes your settings. For more videos on the ScanNCut, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.